Hey guys, I hope you're all having a really great day. We're going to be talking about my top 10 favorite books of 2014. So without further ado, I am just going to get started. Coming in at number 10 is We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. I don't want to go too far into the synopsis of this book, but I will tell you that this book follows the story of a girl named Cadence who has a tragic accident, and when she returns to her family's summer home, she has no memory of the summer when she had her accident. So when she finally returns to the island, she is slowly getting her memory back. She's piecing together the things that she can't quite remember, and the book is just beautifully written. It's lyrically told, and I really loved it. It made me want to read more E. Lockhart. At number 9, and one of the only classics I read this year, is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. This book, I've been putting it off for a really, really long time. I have always been kind of intimidated by classics, and I have always really been intimidated by Jane Eyre for some reason, and I have no idea why. It was so easy to read, and it was so wonderful. Jane Eyre is a heroine for everyone, and I'm so glad that I finally got around to reading it. It was one of the very first books I read this year. It stuck with me all year, and I love it. I love it so much. I think everybody should read Jane Eyre if they haven't, because it is wonderful. At number 8, we have Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. I read this back in the summer, and I loved it so much. I don't think I have to go into the synopsis of this because I'm pretty sure everybody knows what Game of Thrones is about, or at least has heard of it, but I will say that I watched the TV show along with reading the book. I watched a little bit of the show, read a little bit of the book, and I think that really helped me to kind of keep track of all the things that were going on, but also I think it helped me really enjoy the book even more because I could clearly visualize who the characters were and what was going on and everything. In my opinion, it was just a really great way to read the book, and I'm probably gonna do the same thing when I finally get around to reading Clash of Kings, hopefully in 2015. At number 7 is I Am the Messenger by Marcus Zusak. This is the second Marcus Zusak book that I've read. It follows the story of a young cab driver named Ed Kennedy. One day he inadvertently stops a bank robbery from happening, and then he starts receiving these mysterious playing cards in the mail, and on the playing cards is a list of tasks that he needs to complete before he can get the next card, and it just is this incredible adventure going through his city and meeting all these people and helping and doing these things for other people, and it's just so good. It's expertly written, and the whole story weaves together very nicely. I loved it so much. I loved all of the characters, especially Ed. He was an awesome main character, and I highly recommend checking out Marcus Zusak if you haven't yet, because you won't be disappointed. At number 6 is Ruin and Rising by Leigh Bardugo. This is the third and final book of the Grisha trilogy. It's a YA fantasy series following a girl who has grown up in this orphanage her whole life. She's had one friend, and when they come of age, they join the military, and one day a mysterious power is unlocked from her, and she is then swept off to the capital where she is going to be trained and become this awesome soldier and this important Grisha, which is the magic fantasy system. I read the entire trilogy this year, and I loved it so much. From the very first book to the very last book, I was completely engrossed in what was happening. I thought the character development throughout the entire series was very well done, and I thought that the ending and how it left us at the end of the book was just fantastic. I just thought it was excellent, and I recommend this trilogy to anyone who enjoys YA fantasy who hasn't read it yet, because I personally don't think that you'll be disappointed. I think that you'll really enjoy it. At number 5 on my list is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin Alire Sainz. I loved this book. I don't even know how else to describe this book except for that it was so good. It follows the story of Aristotle and Dante, two teenagers growing up in Texas during the 80s, and it is this beautiful story of friendship and finding out who you are, discovering yourself. It's beautifully written, it's easy to read, it's so easy to read, and it is just an excellent story. There's so much emotion and love and friendship in it, and I love books about friendship, and this is a book about friendship, and it is so good. I recommend it to everybody. I recommend it to anybody, even if you don't particularly read YA that often. I think it's just a book that everybody can read and appreciate and enjoy, and so I think everybody should do that. And number 4 was, again, one of the very first books that I read in 2014. It is Where Things Come Back by John Corey Whaley. This book follows a story of a young boy living in Arkansas, which is where I'm from. He doesn't really know what his plans are for the future. He's about to graduate from high school, but he doesn't really know what he wants to do. It starts the summer before his senior year of high school, and he's looking forward to just relaxing, hang out with friends, not worrying about school for a few months. And then one day his brother goes missing. It's alternately told in another storyline with a couple in the past and how their story kind of weaves with our main characters, and it was so good. It's so good. It's about family and friendship and what you will do for a brother, and it's just excellent. It's just so good. Again, even if you don't read a lot of YA, I think that you can appreciate this book. I think you can read and enjoy it. It's easy to read, and it's fun, and it's not just fluffy romance. There's some depth to it, so I recommend it to a lot of people as well. I just think you should go read it. Number 3 on my list is the last book I read in 2014. It was something that I didn't expect at all, and I was pleasantly surprised by how much of an impact this book had on me and how immediately I was like, this is going to be a favorite of the year. Before I was even 100 pages in, I knew that this book was going to be a favorite. And it is Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson. It is kind of a memoir, autobiography type of book, kind of targeted for a more middle grade audience, and it's written in verse. It follows Jacqueline Woodson as she grows up in the South and then moves to Brooklyn, New York, and it is kind of like this crisis of identity. Is she a Southerner or is she a Northerner? And how she fits in with both so well. It's like this really awesome book about civil rights and about growing up in that time period, and it's so good. It's so good. I'm typically not a fan of books written in verse, but I could not help but love this. Number 2, I've put Clockwork Princess by Cassandra Clare, which is the 3rd and final book in the Infernal Devices trilogy. I read the entire trilogy this year, back in March, and it was good. It was so good. I didn't expect to like it as much as I did because I read City of Bones and I didn't like it, so I didn't expect a lot from this trilogy, but I was so wrong. It's so different. The writing style has progressed so much from City of Bones to the Infernal Devices. There's no real literary merit or importance to the Infernal Devices trilogy. I think that me loving Clockwork Princess so much is solely based on my enjoyment of the book. The fact that it affected me emotionally and just mentally. I cried 6 times while I was reading that book. I've never cried that many times while reading a book, and I think just for that reason alone, I had to put it up so high because it really had an effect on me that I wasn't anticipating. I got so connected to the characters, and I loved the story, the progression, the character development. It was a wonderful trilogy overall, but the 3rd book was just an amazing conclusion that I wasn't anticipating, but just completely fell in love with. I recommend this trilogy to anybody. You don't have to read the Mortal Instruments to read the Infernal Devices. If you don't want to commit to a 6-book series, just read the 3 books because they're great and you won't regret it. And finally, my favorite book of 2014 is Codename Verity by Elizabeth Wine. I read this back in September, I believe. September, October, somewhere around in there. And it has stuck with me ever since. It's a World War II novel about a girl who is a spy for the British Army, and she gets captured and she is being held in France, and they are interrogating her and torturing her, and she is writing down the account of what led to her being captured. I've already talked in this video about how much I love books about friendship, and this book was so good. There is no romance in this book. It is completely a book about these 2 girls being friends and how they became friends and where their friendship goes and what happens, and it's just so good. It's so sad. It's so heartbreaking. It's a World War II book, so you know that it's going to be sad. I cried when I read this book, and I I loved it so much. I think that if you like historical fiction and you like the World War II time period, that you'll enjoy this book. It is a little bit slower in the beginning because there's a lot of description about certain airplanes or guns or coding systems or whatever. It takes a little bit to get into, but once you kind of get in, you're sucked in and you can't stop reading. And that's what happened to me. I started reading, I loved it, I couldn't stop, and it was amazing. It's just, there's no way that this wouldn't be my top book of the year because it's just fantastic. It's beautiful and I loved it so much. I loved it so much. So there you go, guys. Those are my top 10 books of 2014. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of the books that I mentioned in this video and what you thought about them. Let me know if any of them also made it onto your top books of 2014. And if not, let me know what some of your top books of 2014 were. Let me know your top 2 or 3 or 1 or however many you want to tell me. I would love to know. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!